This is What Do You Bring to the Table, where youth voices help shape the future of food. We are a non-profit project made by youth for youth that aims to explore the many interesting and diverse career paths available in Canadian food systems. By interviewing industry leaders across the country, we get a first-hand look at existing and emerging agri-food career opportunities, with a focus on equity and sustainability. Special thanks to the R. Howard Webster Foundation, the Catherine Maxwell Meighen Foundation, and the Peterborough K.M. Charitable Foundation for supporting this project. We hope these stories inspire you to explore your own path in Canada's agri-food sector. Please visit our website, www.youthinfoodsystems.ca, to sign up for our free monthly newsletter or to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Now, on to the interview. This is episode 3, Jonah and Joel.
Hi, I'm here with Joel Enman, the Farmland Protection and Stewardship Manager at the Ontario Farmland Trust. Joel, if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm Joel Enman. I have a background in zoology and environment and sustainability. So as you said, I'm currently the Farmland Protection and Stewardship Program Manager at OFT. This position involves me overseeing the monitoring of our protected properties that have easements on them, initiating stewardship projects on the properties we own, and also working on new properties with interested landowners. So I coordinate external contractors such as appraisers and surveyors for work on projects, as well as conducting ecological assessments on properties in progress and also assist in the writing of easements. Another portion of my job is supporting the staff who organize outreach events. So I attend our outreach events such as Canada's Outdoor Farm Show to raise awareness for farmland protection. And then I also support the fund development manager in preparing grant applications for new projects that we are looking to protect.
Wonderful. Thank you for explaining that. If you want to just explain a little bit about what got you into the environment conservation field?
Yeah, for sure. I've always had a love of nature and animals. When I was a little kid, I really wanted to be a veterinarian. So I started my career path working in different animal care jobs. I worked as a zookeeper, I worked at a vet clinic, and I worked on various farms as support for goats and other livestock. Through school, I took zoology in my undergrad, and then I just realized there was some other jobs available in environment and conservation that wasn't as focused on veterinary. That was a little bit more geared towards my interests.
And just would you think that the zoology work you did helping animals, do you think that informed anything in your work at environment studies?
Yeah, for sure. In my undergraduate degree, we did a lot of research type work. So I learned more hands-on practices like bird banding and radio telemetry and species-specific work that gave me some field skills that I definitely wanted to flex a little bit and work in environmental conservation where I could actually use those skills.
And I know after the veterinary work, you also worked in the public sector for a little bit. Do you think that had any impact on the work you're doing right now with the Ontario Farmland Trust?
Definitely. So when I finished my master's degree, I had a co-op portion to it. And in that co-op, I worked for Environment and Climate Change Canada for a program called Target 1 Challenge. It's now evolved into a couple of different sub-programs, but at the time it was called the Target 1 Challenge. And that was all about land protection. So we had 3 different funding streams. We funded provinces and territories. We've funded First Nations as well as environmental not-for-profits to protect land. So we had 2 different styles of projects that we funded. One was capacity for building the capacity for planning to secure land. And then the other kind of project was establishment. And those were quite literally securing the land to protect it as conserved spaces. So in that role, I did mainly, I was working from a desk, working from home through COVID, which was, it was a really interesting experience for me to learn how federal funding programs work and how kind of from the other side. But it kind of led me to this point where I wanted to be working on the other side of that, working for an organization that would be receiving that funding and doing more of the boots on the ground work and less of the funding. So it definitely informed the work I do today because now we apply to provincial and federal funding sources. So I'm kind of seeing it from the other side.
So it definitely getting that inside look helped you with where you are today.
For sure.
All right. In the work you've done with the Ontario Farmland Trust, I know you're working with farmers a lot. Are there any specific stories of a certain farmer or two that really stuck with you?
Yeah, I one of the projects that we are currently working on is a farm that was donated to us. So we now are farm owners. Uh, the late landowners of that farm really had a focus on community, and the farm's called the Philosopher's Wool Company, and it's located in Tiverton, Ontario, which is in Bruce County. And the late landowners did a lot of work for all the local wool producers to be paid fairly, and a lot of advocacy work and stewardship work on their land. So in being that property being donated to us, I didn't get a chance to meet the late landowners, but since we've taken over the ownership of the property, we've met a lot of the late landowners, friends and family, and just to hear the legacy of their work, we're really trying to continue on and move forward with that. And that's been early stages for us because we've never, as the Ontario Farmland Trust, has never owned land before. So it's been a new process for us, but we're starting to set up programming that I feel like really honors the original landowners. And we were able to do an open house on that.
With the way that program is going now, would you say that you'd be interested in looking at more like owning farmland as opposed to helping with it?
Yeah, definitely. So this is kind of a pilot for us to launch our farmland access program, where we're really hoping to encourage new, young, and underrepresented folks in farming to have access to land. Uh, and this is kind of our first step. We don't in this because it was donated to us. We don't have the burden of a mortgage, so we're going to be able to offer farmland leases at a much more affordable rate, and then also offer consistent leases. A big issue with folks who rent farmland is that a lot of the time the leases are just year to year. So that will limit what they're able to farm or what they want to farm. Or maybe it can also, if that changes and they're not able to farm there anymore, they might have to move and then lose their customer base. So the fact that a land trust is able to own this land means that the land is not going to be changing hands, and it's going to be so that people can have more consistent leases and be able to build their farm business a little bit easier. So yeah, we have a history of conservation easement agreements, which are still good, and we're still looking to continue on with those because the private landowners still get to retain ownership of their land. But this is kind of like a second wing of a way we're able to protect farmland that we're really just starting, but we're starting to see more and more farmers who don't have succession plans who are interested in donating their farms to the Ontario Farmland Trust with the vision of that they also want new and young farmers to be able to have access to the land affordably.
I know you spoke a bit there about how renting farmland can be a challenge for some farmers. What do you see as the biggest challenge to farmland sustainability in Ontario currently?
I really think it's going to be the fact that there's so many competing interests for farmland in Ontario for non-agricultural uses. We see a lot of road expansion, home building, and like aggregate extraction on farmland. While it is still important to have roads and homes and aggregate, there's a very limited amount of land that is good quality farmland. Only about 5% of Canada's land mass is made up of prime farmland, and only about 0.5% of that is class one. The central and south of Ontario has some of the best farmland in the world. So we need to kind of balance those competing interests where we're still providing housing, because we still do need housing and aggregate. However, we need to make sure that we're not losing farmland. We like to think of it as a non-renewable, very limited resource, because once farmland's been paved over, you're not able to get it back to the same quality of land once it's been it turned into housing, and then if you convert it back to farmland, you're still not getting the same quality of soil. You've lost some of that its ability to produce. So I do think there's many obstacles, and there's a lot of competing interests for that land and what it's going to be used for. And I think the sustainability of farmland is really something that we need to take into consideration, especially as we look towards issues like food sovereignty. I think that's become really present in people's minds in the last year or so, with different changes in our relationship with the US and our comfortability around importing and exporting and tariffs, as well as there's various, when war happens, there's in different parts of the world, it really makes people realize how interconnected we all are with how much we import and export between different countries. So if we continue at the rate we're paving over farmland, we're not going to be able to feed ourselves. And I think that's like the number one focus of why farmland should still be counted as a very important thing amongst all of the other competing interests for land.
And you obviously have spent like most of your education and your jobs all working in this environmental field. What skills or experiences do you think young people should develop if they want to make an impact in your sector, in like food systems and land conservation?
Yeah, I think like advocacy work is great. Volunteering at there's a whole bunch of different organizations. I mean, we have a volunteer program at Ontario Farmland Trust, but there's also a variety of environmental groups and agricultural groups that are always looking for volunteers. It's always a great place for people of all ages to get involved. For me personally, I found that I learned that this kind of job requires a whole variety of skills. Being a charitable not-for-profit, I've had to build my fundraising skills. That's something that if you're working in any sort of not-for-profit is something that despite my job being mainly a biology job, I still am involved in fundraising. So learning about fundraising and grant writing, that's very important work. Just your general ability to communicate is also something that's going to come in handy in a lot of these types of jobs, because you're often advocating for your organization, for yourself, learning how to communicate through different channels, be it speaking to someone or posting on social media. All of that communications is definitely another skill that's separate from my biology focused skills that I learned in school that has been really important to this job. And pretty much everybody I know in the sector taps into those skills as well.
How would you say that farmland protection intersects with issues of like land access and equity, like you were talking about earlier, especially for like newer farmers? Because I know you said you recently got like farmland from an older farmer, but like for new people coming into the business.
Yeah, so that's becoming a huge difficulty and a huge issue. So people who are interested in farming, who are not part of a family farm or not able to buy land right away, are having a really difficult time getting into the industry. Land prices for homes, but also for farmland, has become way higher per acre. It continues to rise every year, the cost per acre. Those figures are a little bit different depending on which part of the province you're in. So I can't give you exact figures right now, but in general, they're all on the rise. Something we talk about a lot at OFT is between us protecting land via conservation easements and policy work that we're doing and owning farmland in the future, there still is no farming if we don't have it. Great that we protect all this farmland, but we still need somebody to farm that farmland. And a lot of people don't have succession plans. The average age of the average farmer in Ontario continues to increase. I think it's about in their 50s right now is the average age, and at least 2/3 of those people do not have a succession plan, meaning they don't have a plan for what is happening to their farm after they are done farming. One of the ways we're trying to circumvent this is by offering land access. Land access can look a lot of different ways. It can be somebody in an incubator farm where they're close to a market or they're close to a city center and they're learning the basic farming skills, and they are doing it on smaller plots of land, and then they can graduate up to a larger class of land. It can look like just straight up renting the land. One of the ways we are able to do it, because we are a conservation organization and we are a registered charity, is we are able to get some funding to help, at least for the property in Tiverton we call it the Bourgeois property, because that was the last name of the late landowners. But on the Bourgeois property right now, we have funding that's going to be able for us to acquire what we're calling a tool library. So it's going to be a whole bunch of farming tools for anybody who's renting the land to be able to use, because there's also a lot of upfront cost to farming tools. So we want to be able to set folks up for success. Another issue that new and young farmers face is living in close proximity to the land. So a lot of the time where the area they live is maybe going to be pretty far away from the area they can afford to rent. So we're lucky that there is a farmhouse on the farm that we are owning. So we're going to be able to also offer a rental space for somebody to live, because if they're trying to raise livestock, for instance, they need to be on the farm pretty much every single day. So it's definitely a large issue, and it's something that we're discussing through like policy advocacy and work that we're doing that way. But there is a huge gap of new and young farmers who absolutely want to get into farming, but they're not able to. They don't have the tools to get into farming. What we call like our first generation farmers. And it's something that's definitely on our radar.
So the hardest part of getting into that business is really like the opener, like just getting the land, getting the tools, and getting that experience.
Yeah, and the upfront capital, like the upfront money that it costs to set yourself up, and a gap in mentorship. So that is something that is also as we cut up farmland, and there's subdivisions interspersed in like a mosaic in between farmland, we're losing the connectivity of farming neighbors a lot. Historically, the rural areas, farmers would help the farmer that was near them and teach them. And so we're losing that piece of the passing of information as well. So that, yeah, I would say the upfront capital, access to land, and then transfer of knowledge are like the three biggest barriers to new and young farmers succeeding in farming.
And for the final question, if you could go back and give your younger self one piece of career advice, what would it be and why?
Yeah, I think the biggest piece of career advice I would give to myself is to just be really open to what your career could be. When I started my post-secondary education, I was really focused on veterinary. I feel like that's something that was told to me as like, you like animals, this is a great job for you kind of thing. And I'm currently working in a position that I didn't even know existed as recently as 2 years ago, until I basically saw the job posting for this role. I didn't know anything about Ontario Farmland Trust. I didn't know a whole lot about land trusts in general. And I've just found myself in a position that, I wasn't thinking of this as a dream job because I didn't even know it existed. And don't be afraid to try a few things out. And you don't have to stay somewhere forever if it's not turning out to be your favorite thing in the world. Just to be really open to any kind of possibilities for employment and willing to kind of like take that chance. And if it doesn't work out, there's always going to be something similar that you can maybe go into. Like I was working at the government, now I would work for a not-for-profit, but there's that kind of tie-in piece of land protection. So there's always some avenue to continue on your career. And I would just tell my younger self to be more open to that kind of roller coaster.
All right. Thank you very much for talking today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to this episode of What Do You Bring to the Table? A project of Seeds of Diversity's Youth and Food Systems program. We hope you enjoyed hearing from our incredible guests. If you liked what you heard, leave us a comment, share with a friend, or consider donating to support our youth-led work. Thanks again to our amazing funders. the R. Howard Webster Foundation, the Catherine Maxwell Meighen Foundation, and the Peterborough K.M. Hunter Charitable Foundation. Thanks again for listening. Until then, keep exploring your passions, and see you next time.